Yes.
At what point in your life did your wife step in, and how did coupling match with your goals?
Oh, great question. May bring me to tears. Deep breath.
We met in college.
I'll tell you a funny story. You get the emotional side of it. We met in college. How we met in college was really kind of funny. We were at Atomic College, right down the road, and I was a senior, she was a freshman. And I was poor, always have been, when I was a kid anyway, and was working in the cafeteria in the basement scrubbing pots and pans, big pots and pans, huge pots and pans, with these big metal brushes. And John Radcliffe, my boss at the time, I still remember John very well, came downstairs to the basement and said, "Hey, Perrino, I need you upstairs." Just like John Severa came to me in the lobby of the hospital and said, "Hey, I hear you have a college degree." John Radcliffe in 1970, I guess, 70, came downstairs and said, "I need you upstairs." I said, "John, I got all these pots and pans. I can't leave. Get upstairs." So he sends me upstairs, puts me on the conveyor belt, and I'm there separating pots and pans, and, or plates and forks and knives and whatever. And this cute young girl walks up and smiles at me and says, "Hi, that's Denise." That's my story. That's how we met. We met 45 years ago. We've been married 37 years, and I'm not even sure what your question was, but Denise is still to this day my best friend. She helped me write the speech. She's a theater person. She's a drama coach. She helped me pause it, time it, change it, modify it, coach me. She's done that for years, and I've done lots and lots of public speaking, and I've never given a speech without Denise by my side helping me. Did I answer your question? I think I did. I'm not sure. But Denise is my rock, and I'll say that publicly. She knows that already. Who else? That's a tough question.
Sorry.
She's probably the reason why I'm here today, because this is my third graduate program, third or fourth, I can't remember, I lost track. And she's supported me through every one of them. She's thinking about going back to graduate school, and I told her, "You got my support 100%. So we've always been very supportive of each other. Question back over here?
Yeah. What would you tell? I'm a little older like you.
Oh, you're not my age, I promise you.
Almost.
Don't let all this enthusiasm kid you. I'm 66 years old. I collect Social Security this year. I'm not collecting it, but I can. I don't feel 66. I feel like I'm 36 half the time. Anyway.
Mine goes back and forth. But what would you tell these young people today? It's something I struggle with when I talk to them. A lot of them seem to be frustrated with the political system, and they don't see how sociology can affect that.
I think, yeah.
I see it quite a bit.
I hope my speech helped them understand that. We need active sociologists. And you don't have to be in sociology to be a sociologist. Denise, just last night in the motel room, you were talking, and she said everybody ought to have, how do you say, everybody ought to have some sociology and then during their life. I can't recall exactly what she said. But sociology is important for everybody to know. I tell my students at the community college that if you're a nursing student, you'll be a better nurse by taking this class. Because nursing isn't just about phlebotomies and IVs and blood. Well, it's not that. It's about connecting with people. Because we know that holistically people don't heal unless they connect with the nurse, the doctor, whoever it happens, the technician. So sociology will make you a better nurse. So I don't care what your degree is going to be in. If you're taking a class in sociology, or if you're going to major in sociology, you'll be hugely valuable to so many people. You may not know what it's written initially, but eventually you will be. In sales, you name it. I mean, it's just a degree that can be used anywhere because you know how to deal with people and how to relate to people. And get off this idea that it's not going to pay you any money. Life isn't all about just money. There's so much more to it than just making money. Yes?
I was going to say, so you've kind of transitioned from a lot of different careers to other careers. So I was wondering for our students going forward if you could talk about kind of some advice for making the jump into a new career, maybe.
Pay your dues. And don't be afraid to do something really menial, like be a janitor. I can tell you, I've had a lot of careers and a lot of jobs, but the two that I remember the most that were most rewarding to me were the job at Arlington Hospital, where I was a janitor, and went from being a janitor to an administrative person making good money and managing, in the end, 120 people. I left it because I wanted to get into the public sector, but, you know. And the second job that I had that was equally rewarding to me, frankly, and you'll laugh when you hear this, was driving a tractor trailer. I drove a tractor trailer interstate for 3 summers, I guess it was. And what an experience that was. And sociology came in handy there too. It's another whole world. I mean, I'm sure there's sociologists out there who've studied, you know, done methodological studies on, you know, the life of tractor trailer drivers. I mean, it was an amazing experience. So, the answer to your question, don't be afraid to take a menial job. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to pay your dues. And don't expect to get a job paying $85,000 a year out of college or grad school. It's not going to happen. Unless you get real lucky. It's not going to happen. That's not life. That's not the reality of it. The reality is you're going to probably take a job paying $30,000 or $35,000 a year, live with your mom and dad for a while, and save money. Right? That's the way it is. And keep in mind that when I was your age, there was a raging war going on, and the draft hung over my head for 7 or 8 years, and the civil rights movement, and the riots in the streets, and all the various other social movements. America was coming unglued. The period between the time that John Kennedy was assassinated in 1963 until Richard Nixon resigned on August 9th, 1974, I can tell you those 2 dates, was the most tumultuous decade in America since the Civil War. We came closer to the Civil War in America than we had since the Civil War. But again, it was a fascinating time to be a student. I learned more outside the classroom than I ever did in the classroom. So take advantage of opportunities that you may not even think are there, but they're there right in front of you. Other questions? I love answering questions, especially from students. I just have so much advice to give you. Yes?
So with everything that you've done with your life, which you've done a lot, as we've all seen, what would you say your gist is? And when I say that, like, there are biologists, there are sociologists, like, what is your gist? Like, what somebody on an elevator asks you, what do you do? What do you say?
I'm a humanist.
Okay.
You know, we run a tutoring service. We don't make a lot of money running tutoring. That's not going to make a lot of money running a tutoring service. But we help kids all the time. We're always helping kids. And God knows how many, 20 years, how many thousands and thousands of kids and families we've helped. Parents, kids, teachers, counselors. So, you know, I believe in helping people. Denise does too. We're educators. We never made a lot of money. We live a modest lifestyle, but we've helped a lot of people along the way. And, you know, to some degree, I think I mentioned in my talk calls, I do consider myself a sociologist, even though I don't even have a doctorate in it, not even a master's yet. And yet, if people say to me, what are you? I guess, to answer your question, I guess I would say a sociologist, because I teach it, and I'm getting close to getting a master's in it. But at my core, I'm really a humanist. It reminds me, years ago, Denise last one, and I still do this, whenever I fill out an application that asks me my race, it always says white, black, you know, whatever. I always put an extra dash at the bottom and I write human. I've done that on my census now for decades. And every now and then the census, I think it was the 1980 or 1990 census, the Census Bureau knocked on my door on a Sunday morning and said, excuse me, sir, you know, you filled this out incorrectly. I said, no, I didn't. That's my race. So look, you got to figure it out. Look at me and figure it out. My dad was Sicilian. My mom was from Rome and Naples, and so I don't know what I am, but you know, I'm human. So that's it. And I closed the door. That was the end of that. Who else? Question?
I was going back on the task system that we need to do to be more effective in society. You mentioned critical.
You have to speak up a little bit.
So you can speak up a little bit. I was just going back on the point system that you made, basically talking about what we need to do to be more effective in society, such as critical thinking and optical initiatives. Can you elaborate a little bit more on optical initiatives and how important that is to the society and creating programs that actually stop social stratification and social inequality?
I didn't get the first word. Something initiatives.
Entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial initiatives. Okay. And it goes back to what I said before about not being afraid to fail. You know, being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. It's tough. It's not easy. When you wake up in the morning, if you're an entrepreneur, you better find some way to make some money. Nobody's writing a check for you. There's no guaranteed check. So when I wake up in the morning for 20 years now, I haven't had, the nice thing, the bad news is I've got to make my own money. The good news is I haven't had a boss since 1990. Nobody's been looking over my shoulder for 25 years. But for 25 years, I've had to get up every day and plan to figure out some way to make some money. Because nobody was sending me a state check, a county check, or a federal check with a pension. So being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not for everybody. It's a very small percentage of the population. I've never taken a class in accounting or business in my entire life, and yet I run a business. And the reason I do that well, I think, we do that well, is because we're humanists and we enjoy people. We know how to treat people well and with respect. And that's what business is all about. It's not about accounting. You hire people to do the accounting. That's why they make QuickBooks. You know, that's why QuickBooks, you don't have to worry about accounting. And I mean, I have an idea. I have a general idea where all the money is, but I don't worry about the details. I worry about the people. And that's the sociology. That's the sociological perspective that's enabled me to be successful in business. Good question. Are you thinking about being an entrepreneur?
Well, I'm already doing that.
Okay.
I just want you to elaborate more.
Okay. Well, call me. We can talk.
Yes,
Right?
thank you. I
I'm more than happy to talk to you. More questions?
So you said that you mentioned you failed a lot of times. Like, how did you pick yourself back up? Like, what was your biggest motivation to keep going?
A couple of things. I had kids a couple of times when I was in the process of failing. So when you look at, a couple of kids and you realize that your wife's working, you're not, you got a mortgage to pay, you got a car payment to pay. It wasn't even ego. It was just recognizing the fact that, I had to save for their college education, I had to save for our retirement, I had to pay for the mortgage. So having children, pull a knot in your tail real fast. Grit. From a very young age, I was taught to work from the time I was 10 years old. My dad died when I was 10. Another story it's very interesting. Denise has heard this story many times. My dad died when I was 10 years old. He died in front of me. Another emotional thing for me. But he died in front of me, and my mom had 4 kids, ranging from the age of 8 to 15. And she had a 7th grade education. And we lived on Social Security checks and food stamps. And donated food through the federal government, big chunks of cheese and whatever, bread. So I worked from the time I was 10 years old. So I never knew what it was like to fail and remain failing. I never saw my mother, or my father for that matter, fail and stay a failure. So failure in my life was never an option. So I knew that I had the ability to pick myself up by the example of my mother and my family in general. It's that Italian thing too. Anybody in this room Italian extraction? So it's the Italian thing. The Italians are very proud people. It's a very proud culture, and so that was imbued in me. That was really instilled in me at a young age. And then my wife always gave me tremendous encouragement. Never, whenever I had my ups and downs, I had plenty of them. Always stood by me. Was always there with me. Always encouraging me. And so it was family. It was culture. It was my personal experience growing up with a single mom. Not everybody has, now at 66 years old, I see that as an opportunity and as an advantage. When it happened, it certainly wasn't. But now it is. Now I look back and I realize that there are a lot of people, including my own 2 sons, who have never really seen adversity. I worry about that sometimes. I worry about young people today not experiencing adversity. You'll never know the joy of success if you don't experience some failure and adversity. And there are a lot of people today who just don't see it, don't get it, and are looking for that $85,000 a year job or $100,000 a year job straight out of college, and don't know what to do when the job disappears. So I'm not wishing bad luck on anybody. I'm just saying if it comes your way, learn it. I mentioned before grit. If you don't have it, get it. Figure it out. And don't wallow in self-pity. Yes?
So earlier you were saying, as a sociologist, like a trained sociologist, somebody who recognizes it all the time, you never kind of turn that sociological view off. And I noticed I'm like that. A lot of our peers are like
Drives you crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can. It can if you
It's
don't
like
figure
I'm
out-
burdened with this disease.
Yeah. And then you got to interact with people who are non-sociologists.
I know.
A lot of times
They're clueless.
Kind of difficult. So what would
It is.
you warn us or kind of give us some guidelines as far as going out into the world and interacting with people who don't know the things?
Yeah, let me give you an example. On a couple of theater boards, my wife's a theater director. She's involved in lots of professional shows. And one of the professional shows that she was involved in, that I'm on the theater board of this company, is with Creative Culture in Falls Church, Virginia. And they did Arabian Nights about 6 months ago, 8 months ago. And apparently it's a traditional Arabian tale. I was offended by it. I walked out of there and said to Denise, we got the card, I said, what were they thinking doing this show? There were references to beheadings, chopping people's ears off, magic carpets, all the stereotypes about Middle Eastern people were contained in this children's show, lots of kids, and there was one family there that I'm almost positive was of Middle Eastern extraction, who I'm sure had to be squeamish and skittish about the whole thing. So I can't even go to a play without seeing sociology in it. And Denise could probably tell you 10 other examples of things I've experienced recently. What I did in that situation, I knew I was on the board. I couldn't go to the artistic director and say, hey, Laura, you really screwed up here. This show was inappropriate. I couldn't say that in front of the whole board until one night, when we were having a board meeting, somebody else brought up an issue about a show where there was sexuality in the show, and there was a young girl in the show, and the person objected to or questioned whether or not we should be doing shows like this with young children in it. And I thought, this is my perfect opening. I'm going to say something. In support of her, I said, well, Barbara, I understand what you're saying because I saw Arabian Nights. And I got in the car with Denise and said what I just said, so I understand where you're coming from. And I even said to the board, you have to pardon me, but a sociologist is sitting in this room. And I'm always burdened by that perspective, that sociological perspective. What I would say to you is never lose the perspective. Always be aware of what's going on around you, but try to diplomatically change it. We were talking about that last night. We did Arabian Nights in 2015, but we don't do Uncle Remus, and we don't do Amos and Andy anymore, right? We don't do those things anymore. It's not political correctness, it's just common sense. So why would you do Arabian Nights when there are all these stereotypes about people from the Middle East, when in fact we don't do other things that are offensive to other cultures and other races and ethnicities? So be aware of it, embrace it, and try to be diplomatic and find a way to change it. So if you serve on a theater board and you're in a position where you're selecting the shows for the coming year, this time around I'm going to say, okay, I want to see the shows. And I want to see the script. And before they even do the show, I'm going to say, this is why you shouldn't do it. I learned. So, yeah, it is a burden, there's no doubt about it. And people who have degrees in sociology have a perspective that almost nobody else has. I have so many students say, I'm majoring in psychology. What are you majoring in psychology for? It's about one person. It's like one mind. Who cares about one mind? The world is about groups. You're all watching the news. Everything around you is about groups, and you're majoring in psychology. Right? Sociology is where it's at. Right? Sociology is everywhere in your life. Everywhere in your life. And if you truly have a sociological perspective, that's a good thing, because you'll bring a perspective to everything you do in life that other people don't have. Most people don't think the way you think. Most people do not think the way you think. They haven't been trained the way you've been trained. It's a blessing and it's a burden at the same time. Believe it or not, I'm even tired of talking.